The morning sun cast long shadows across Earth as Ambassador John Carter stood before the massive windows of New Geneva Station. The orbital facility hung in space like a silver jewel, humanity's most advanced diplomatic outpost, circling the blue planet below. Carter's reflection stared back at him from the reinforced glass, showing a man in his 50s with silver hair and steady gray eyes that had seen decades of delicate negotiations. Today would be different from anything he had handled before. "Sir, the alien ship is approaching our outer perimeter," Captain Lisa Morgan announced from behind him. Her voice carried the crisp authority of someone who had spent years in Earth's Defense Command. She wore her dress uniform with perfect precision, every medal and ribbon placed exactly where regulations demanded. Her dark hair was pulled back, in a regulation bun, and her brown eyes missed nothing as she monitored the various displays around the command center. Carter turned from the window and nodded. "How long until they dock with our station?" "Approximately 30 minutes, sir," Morgan replied. She gestured toward the main viewing screen where a dot of light grew slowly larger against the star field. "Their ship is massive, at least 10 times the size of anything we've built. Our sensors are having trouble getting clear readings on its composition." Dr. Amy Rodriguez looked up from her workstation where streams of data flowed across multiple monitors. She was the lead xenobiologist for this historic meeting, chosen for her expertise in alien psychology and communication. Her curly brown hair framed a face marked by intense concentration as she studied the incoming vessel's energy signatures. "The ship appears to be made of some kind of crystalline material," she said. "It's reflecting and bending light in ways that don't match any technology in our databases." Carter walked over to review the preparations one final time. The Grand Conference Hall had been arranged with Earth's finest cultural displays. Paintings from the greatest human artists lined the walls alongside sculptures that represented thousands of years of creative achievement. Musical instruments from every continent sat in glass cases, while literature from dozens of languages filled specially designed shelves. Scientific achievements were represented through interactive displays, showing humanity's journey from the first tools to space exploration. "Are you certain this is the right approach, sir?" Lieutenant Peter Collins asked quietly. He was Carter's aide, a young man with blonde hair and blue eyes who had been specially selected for this assignment. His job was to observe everything and take detailed notes for the historical record. "The aliens might not understand the significance of these cultural items." Carter smiled slightly. "That's exactly what we're counting on, Lieutenant. Sometimes showing who you are is more important than demonstrating what you can do." Admiral Richard Hayes appeared on the main communication screen from Earth Command headquarters. His weathered face and graying beard spoke of decades spent in military service. The stars on his uniform indicated his position as the highest-ranking officer in Earth's Defense Force. "Ambassador Carter, all preparations are complete on our end. The security protocols are in place, and our monitoring systems are active." "Understood, Admiral," Carter replied. "What's the status of our defensive capabilities?" Hayes paused for just a moment before answering. "All standard systems are operational and ready. Our ships are maintaining normal patrol patterns throughout the system." Carter noticed the slight emphasis on the word standard, but made no comment. He had worked with Hayes long enough to understand when the Admiral was choosing his words carefully. The massive alien ship finally came into visual range, and everyone in the command center fell silent. The vessel was beautiful in an alien way, its crystalline hull seeming to flow like liquid metal while maintaining a solid structure. Strange lights pulsed along its surface in patterns that suggested some form of communication or navigation system. The ship was shaped like an elongated teardrop, with flowing curves that made it seem more grown than built. "Docking request received," Morgan announced. "They're asking permission to attach to Bay 7. "Grant their request," Carter ordered. "And Captain, I want our best people monitoring everything, every word, every gesture, every energy reading." As the alien ship slowly maneuvered toward the docking bay, Carter reviewed the intelligence reports one more time. The Zalathi Confederation controlled hundreds of star systems across this part of the galaxy. They had made contact with Earth 6 months ago through long-range communication, announcing their intention to visit and discuss humanity's place in galactic civilization. The messages had been polite but carried an undertone that suggested this was not truly a negotiation between equals. "Docking complete," Morgan reported. "The airlock is cycling now." Carter straightened his diplomatic uniform and walked toward the reception area. His team followed in precise formation, each person knowing their role in the carefully planned ceremony. Dr. Rodriguez carried her recording equipment to document everything for later analysis. Lieutenant Collins had his notepad ready to capture every detail. Captain Morgan positioned herself where she could observe the proceedings while maintaining communication with the security center. The airlock doors opened with a soft hiss, and the first alien stepped through. Delegate Vexathara was tall and thin, standing nearly 7 feet in height. Its body resembled a praying mantis more than anything human, with long limbs that moved with fluid grace. The alien's skin was translucent, showing the movement of fluids beneath the surface that shifted color as it moved. Multiple eyes arranged around its angular head studied the humans with what seemed like detached curiosity. Behind Vexathara came its escort, 6 alien soldiers wearing armor that seemed to be made from the same crystalline material as their ship. Each soldier carried weapons that hummed with barely contained energy. Their movements were precise and coordinated, showing military discipline that transcended species barriers. "Welcome to New Geneva Station," Carter said, stepping forward with his hands visible and empty in the universal gesture of peaceful intent. "I am Ambassador John Carter, representing the people of Earth in these historic discussions." Vexathara's skin shifted to a pale blue color as it examined Carter. When it spoke, its voice came through a translation device that rendered its words in perfect English, though with a mechanical quality that stripped away any emotional nuance. "I am Delegate Vexathara of the Zalathi Confederation. We have traveled far to reach this remote system and examine the species that calls itself human." The word "examine" hung in the air with uncomfortable implications. Carter maintained his diplomatic smile while making mental notes about the alien's choice of language. This was clearly not a meeting between equals in the Confederation's view. "Please allow us to show you to the conference hall where we can begin our discussions," Carter said, gesturing toward the corridor that led deeper into the station. As they walked, Vexathara's multiple eyes constantly moved, taking in every detail of the station's construction. The alien paused occasionally to study the wall panels or ceiling fixtures, its skin shifting colors in patterns that Dr. Rodriguez was carefully documenting. The translator device remained silent during these examinations, but the alien's body language suggested it was not impressed with human engineering. They entered the Grand Conference Hall, and Carter watched carefully as Vexathara surveyed the cultural displays. The alien moved from exhibit to exhibit with the same detached interest someone might show when visiting a zoo. It paused briefly before a painting by one of Earth's master artists, its head tilting in what might have been confusion or amusement. "These are examples of human creative expression," Carter explained. "Art, Music, literature, and scientific achievement spanning thousands of years of our civilization. Vexthara's skin shifted to a yellow color that Dr. Rodriguez's briefings had suggested might indicate amusement. How quaint, the alien said through its translator. Your species appears to have dedicated considerable time to decorative activities. The dismissive tone was subtle but unmistakable. Carter felt his jaw tighten slightly, but maintained his diplomatic composure. We believe that culture and creativity are essential parts of what makes us human. Indeed, Vexithara replied, though its tone suggested it found this concept puzzling rather than admirable. Perhaps we should begin our formal discussions. The Confederation has much to offer your developing civilization. The formal negotiations began the next morning in the same grand conference hall. Carter had arranged for his full diplomatic team to be present, including Dr. Rodriguez with her analysis equipment and Lieutenant Collins with his careful documentation. Captain Morgan observed from the security station, her eyes constantly moving between the alien delegation and the various monitoring displays that tracked everything happening in the room. Vexithara entered with the same fluid grace as before, its crystalline escort taking positions around the room's perimeter. The alien's skin showed a confident purple color as it activated a holographic display device that projected images above the conference table. The technology was far beyond anything humanity possessed, creating three-dimensional images that seemed solid enough to touch. The Zalathi Confederation is prepared to offer your species a remarkable opportunity, Vexithara announced. Its translator rendered the words with mechanical precision, but the alien's body language radiated satisfaction. We are willing to grant Earth protectorate status within our galactic civilization. Carter leaned forward slightly, his expression carefully neutral. Please explain what protectorate status would involve for humanity. The holographic display shifted to show a detailed map of local star systems. Blue markers indicated Confederation worlds, while red dots marked species under protectorate control. Earth appeared as a small yellow dot on the edge of the display, seemingly insignificant among the hundreds of other worlds. Under Confederation guidance, your species would be granted the privilege of developing your own solar system, Vexithara continued. Its skin shifted to a satisfied orange color. You would be permitted to establish mining operations on your outer planets and asteroid belt, naturally under Confederation oversight to ensure proper environmental standards. Dr. Rodriguez made careful notes while watching the alien's color patterns. Her briefings had included extensive study of Zalathi body language, and she was beginning to recognize the subtle signs of condescension in Vexithara's posture and skin tone changes. What would the Confederation require from Earth in return for this privilege? Carter asked carefully. Vexithara's multiple eyes focused on Carter with what might have been amusement. The terms are quite reasonable for a developing species. Earth would provide 60% of all extracted resources to support Confederation development projects. Your population would undergo genetic sampling to contribute to our biological databases. Most importantly, your species would relocate to designated population zones to allow for proper development of your world's resources. The words hit the room like a physical blow. Lieutenant Collins stopped writing mid-sentence, his pen hovering over his notepad. Captain Morgan's hand moved instinctively toward her sidearm before she caught herself and returned to her neutral pose. Dr. Rodriguez continued taking notes, but her knuckles had turned white as she gripped her pen. Carter's expression remained perfectly diplomatic, though his gray eyes had turned cold. Population zones? Oh, yes, Vexithara replied, its skin now showing bright yellow patches that definitely indicated amusement. Your current distribution across the planet is quite inefficient. The Confederation has extensive experience in optimizing planetary resources. Your species would be much happier in properly designed habitation areas. The holographic display changed to show before and after images of other worlds. The before pictures showed planets with diverse cities and landscapes. The after images revealed sterile industrial complexes with small, contained areas marked as population centers. These are worlds that have already benefited from Confederation development, Vexithara explained proudly. As you can see, proper resource management has transformed these primitive planets into productive members of galactic civilization. Carter studied the images carefully. The transformed worlds looked like strip mines with prison camps attached. What happened to the original populations of these worlds? They were successfully integrated into Confederation society, Vexithara answered. Its skin showed confident blue streaks. Some required more guidance than others, but all eventually understood the benefits of civilized development. Your species shows promise of being quite trainable. The word trainable echoed through the room like an insult. Dr. Rodriguez looked up from her notes, her face carefully controlled, but her eyes blazing with barely contained anger. She had spent years studying human anthropology and knew exactly what Vexithara was suggesting. "You compare us to animals being trained?" Carter asked quietly. Vexithara's skin shifted to amused yellow again. "Not animals precisely. Think of it more like domestication. Your species shows considerable potential for useful work once properly directed. On our homeworld, we keep a species of small mammals that are quite clever and resourceful. With proper training, they can perform many useful tasks. Humans appear to have similar capabilities." Captain Morgan's jaw clenched so tightly that Carter could hear her teeth grinding from across the room. Lieutenant Collins had gone completely pale, his pen forgotten as he stared at the alien delegate. Dr. Rodriguez continued her observations, but her scientific detachment was being tested to its limits. The holographic display changed again, showing detailed biological scans of various species. "Your genetics are particularly interesting," Vexithara continued. "Human adaptability and endurance could prove valuable for mining operations and other labor-intensive projects. The genetic sampling would help us determine optimal breeding programs to enhance these useful traits." Carter felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Breeding programs?" "Standard practice for all protectorate species," Vexithara explained with the casual tone of someone discussing livestock management. "Selective enhancement of beneficial characteristics while reducing aggressive tendencies and independent thinking. Most species find they are much happier once these modifications are complete." The alien activated another section of its display, showing what appeared to be medical procedures being performed on various humanoid species. The beings in the images looked peaceful and docile, but their eyes held an emptiness that was deeply disturbing. "The modification process is quite humane," Vexithara assured them. "Advanced psychological conditioning combined with minor genetic adjustments. Most subjects adapt within a few generations. Resistance typically fades once the benefits become apparent." Dr. Rodriguez finally looked up from her notes, her scientific training warring with her human outrage. "What you're describing is the systematic destruction of our species' autonomy and identity." Vexithara's skin showed surprised green patches. "Destruction? Quite the opposite. We are offering improvement. Your species currently wastes enormous resources on meaningless conflicts and inefficient social structures. Under Confederation guidance, these problems would be eliminated." along with everything that makes us human, Carter said quietly. Sentiment, Vexithara dismissed with a wave of its long arm. All primitive species initially resist optimization. However, once the process is complete, such concerns become irrelevant. Happiness and productivity increase dramatically. The alien began showing more images of optimized worlds, cities that looked like efficient factories, populations that moved with mechanical precision, art and culture replaced by functional design. Everything sterile and purposeful, stripped of anything that might be considered uniquely creative or independent. Your cultural displays yesterday were quite charming, Vexithera continued, its tone now openly condescending. Primitive societies often develop elaborate decorative traditions to compensate for their lack of true purpose. Once properly integrated, your species will find much more fulfilling activities in productive labor. Carter felt his diplomatic training being pushed to its absolute limits. Every instinct screamed at him to reject these terms immediately, but he forced himself to maintain professional composure. I see. And if humanity were to decline this generous offer? Vexithara's skin shifted to a warning red color, the first time the alien had shown anything resembling a threat. That would be unfortunate. The Confederation has invested considerable resources in reaching this remote system. Such investments require returns. The holographic display changed to show Confederation military vessels, massive ships that dwarfed even Vexithara's diplomatic vessel. Occasionally, primitive species require demonstration of Confederation capabilities before they understand the wisdom of cooperation. These demonstrations are always regrettable but sometimes necessary. The images showed planets being bombarded from orbit, their surfaces scarred by weapons that turned mountains to glass and oceans to steam. The galaxy contains many species that initially resisted Confederation guidance. Eventually, they all reached the proper understanding. Carter stared at the images of destruction, calculating odds and possibilities. How long do we have to consider your offer? The Confederation is not unreasonable, Vexithera replied, its skin returning to confident blue. Your species may have 3 of your planetary rotations to reach the obvious conclusion. Surely that is sufficient time for even primitive minds to understand basic arithmetic. The dismissive tone was no longer subtle. Vexithara was making it clear. The second day of negotiations arrived with a different atmosphere aboard New Geneva Station. Ambassador Carter entered the conference hall precisely on time, his diplomatic uniform immaculate and his demeanor calm. Behind him came his team. But something had changed in their bearing. Where yesterday they had shown the eager attention of people hoping for productive dialogue, today they displayed the professional distance of individuals conducting necessary but unpleasant business. Dr. Rodriguez took her position at the analysis station, her equipment recording every detail of the alien delegation's behavior. Lieutenant Collins sat with his notepad ready, but his posture was straighter, more formal. Captain Morgan observed from her security position, her expression unreadable but alert. Vexithara entered with its crystalline escort, the alien's skin, showing confident purple patterns. It had clearly expected this day to bring either complete human submission or desperate counteroffers. The delegate activated its holographic display with theatrical flourish, prepared to elaborate on the Confederation's generous terms. Ambassador Carter, Vexithera began with false warmth, I trust your primitive leaders have had sufficient time to comprehend the wisdom of accepting Confederation guidance. Carter took his seat across from the alien and opened his diplomatic folder with methodical precision. "We have considered your proposal carefully, Delegate Vexthara. Please continue with any additional details you wish to share." The response was perfectly neutral, showing neither acceptance nor rejection. Vexthara's skin flickered briefly with confused green patches before returning to confident purple. "Excellent. I shall elaborate on the implementation timeline for your species integration." The holographic display showed detailed schedules and logistics charts. Resource extraction will begin immediately upon agreement, with initial quotas set at manageable levels to allow your species time to adapt. Population relocation will commence within 6 months, beginning with your most productive individuals. Arctic made notes on his tablet without comment. His pen moved steadily across the digital surface, recording technical details and timelines with the same attention he might give to trade agreements or cultural exchanges. "I understand. What is the projected timeline for genetic sampling procedures?" An excellent question," Vexthara replied, its skin brightening with satisfaction. "Initial sampling will focus on your healthiest specimens to establish baseline genetic profiles. This data will inform the optimization protocols for future generations." "I see," Carter said, making another note. "And the population centers you mentioned yesterday?" Lieutenant Collins continued his documentation, but his writing had taken on a mechanical quality. He recorded facts and figures without the interpretive comments that had filled his notes the previous day. Dr. Rodriguez monitored her instruments, cataloging the alien's biometric responses while maintaining perfect scientific detachment. Vexthara grew increasingly elaborate in its descriptions, showing detailed architectural plans for human habitation zones. The structures looked like enormous dormitories designed for maximum efficiency rather than comfort. Each facility will house approximately 50,000 humans in optimal living conditions. Work assignments will be distributed based on individual capabilities and genetic advantages. "Understood," Carter replied, adding the information to his notes. "What provisions are made for human social structures and family units?" The alien's skin shifted to amused yellow. "Such primitive concepts will become irrelevant once proper social conditioning is implemented. Attachment to biological relatives and tribal groupings are inefficient remnants of your species' savage past. Confederation methods will redirect these emotional energies toward more productive purposes." Carter nodded and made another notation. "I see. Please continue." The complete lack of emotional reaction was beginning to unsettle Vexthara. The alien had expected either grateful acceptance or horrified rejection, not this clinical documentation of humanity's enslavement. Its skin showed brief flickers of confused green before it pushed forward with its presentation. "Perhaps you would benefit from seeing success stories from other integrated species," Vexthara suggested. The holographic display changed to show what appeared to be promotional videos from other conquered worlds. Happy, productive beings worked in perfect harmony under Confederation oversight. These individuals represent the highest achievement of Confederation guidance, Vexthara explained. "Notice their contentment and purposeful activity. Your species could achieve similar fulfillment." Carter studied the images carefully. The beings in the videos moved with mechanical precision, their faces showing pleasant emptiness rather than genuine happiness. "What was the original population of these worlds before integration?" "Integration naturally involves some population adjustment," Vexthara admitted. "Individuals unable to adapt to civilized society are unfortunately incompatible with continued existence. However, survival rates have improved significantly with refined techniques." "What are the current survival rates?" Carter asked with the same neutral tone he might use to discuss shipping schedules. Vexithera's skin flickered uncertainly. Optimization processes typically achieve 60 to 70% viability in the final integrated population. Dr. Rodriguez looked up from her instruments briefly, her face showing no reaction to the casual discussion of genocide. She returned to her readings without comment, treating the conversation like any other scientific observation. Lieutenant Collins continued writing, his notes now reduced to bullet points and technical specifications. The horror of yesterday had been replaced by professional documentation, as if he were recording the details of livestock management rather than the destruction of human civilization. "I require clarification on several points," Carter said, reviewing his tablet. "What happens to individuals who show continued resistance to integration protocols?" The alien seemed genuinely puzzled by the clinical nature of Carter's questions. "Persistent resistance is treated as a psychological disorder requiring correction. Most cases respond to enhanced conditioning procedures. Those that do not—" "I understand," Carter interrupted gently. "No need to elaborate. What about individuals with genetic variations that make them unsuitable for optimization?" Vexithera's skin showed relieved blue patterns, apparently grateful to return to technical discussions. "Genetic incompatibility is identified early in the screening process. Such individuals are typically reassigned to alternative functions until natural population adjustment occurs." Carter made more notes, his expression never changing. Captain Morgan received a coded message on her communicator and responded with a brief acknowledgement before returning to her observations. The routine nature of the exchange was barely noticeable, just another piece of standard diplomatic protocol. "You seem remarkably composed for a primitive species facing integration," Vexthara observed. "Most civilizations require extensive explanation before they comprehend the benefits of Confederation guidance." "We are a thorough people," Carter replied simply. "Important decisions require complete understanding of all implications." The alien's escort commander, Kethvel, shifted uncomfortably in its position. The scarred warrior had overseen dozens of similar negotiations, and humanity's reaction was unlike anything in its experience. Most species either collapsed into despair or exploded into futile rage. This methodical documentation of their own destruction was deeply unsettling. Vexithara tried a different approach, activating displays that showed the military might of the Confederation. Massive fleets patrolled conquered systems, while orbital weapons platforms maintained perfect order. "Perhaps seeing our defensive capabilities will help your species appreciate the futility of resistance." Carter examined the military displays with the same clinical interest he had shown everything else. "Impressive force projection capabilities. What is your standard deployment pattern for system pacification?" The question was asked like a student seeking information rather than a potential victim planning resistance. Vexithara found itself actually answering in technical detail, describing fleet movements and orbital bombardment patterns as if conducting a military briefing rather than delivering threats. "Your species' composure is unusual," the alien admitted. "Most primitive civilizations display more emotional volatility when confronted with integration requirements. We prefer to understand situations completely before reacting," Carter explained. He glanced at his watch with casual precision. "I believe we should recess for today to allow proper consideration of the additional information you've provided. Dr. Rodriguez began packing her equipment with the same methodical care she showed for any scientific endeavor. Lieutenant Collins closed his notepad and organized his papers with bureaucratic efficiency. Captain Morgan confirmed the security protocols for the alien delegation's return to their ship, treating them like any other diplomatic visitors. Very well, Vexithera agreed, though its skin showed confused green patterns. Tomorrow we shall finalize the implementation details for your species integration. As the alien delegation departed, Kethval whispered urgently to its. The third and final day of negotiations began with Delegate Vexithera arriving early to the conference hall. The alien's skin displayed confident blue and purple patterns as it supervised the setup of its holographic displays. Today would bring either complete human capitulation or the regrettable need for military demonstration. Either way, Vexithera expected the meeting to be brief and decisive. The alien had spent the previous evening composing its report to the Confederation Council, describing how another primitive species had been successfully intimidated into submission. The humans' strange calm yesterday had been puzzling, but Vexithera attributed it to shock paralysis common in species facing the enormity of their situation. Ambassador Carter entered the conference hall precisely on schedule, accompanied by his full diplomatic team. However, Vexithera noticed several new faces among the humans. Military officers in formal dress uniforms took positions along the walls, their bearing suggesting ceremonial rather than functional roles. The alien dismissed them as meaningless, pageantry designed to make humanity's surrender appear more dignified. Dr. Rodriguez set up her equipment with the same methodical precision she had shown for the past 2 days. Lieutenant Collins prepared his documentation materials, while Captain Morgan took her usual observation position. The entire human delegation moved with calm efficiency, showing no signs of the desperation Vexithera expected from a species about to accept slavery. Delegate Vexithera, Carter began as he took his seat. Thank you for your patience while we consulted with Earth's leadership. We have reached our decision regarding your proposal. The alien's skin brightened with satisfaction. Excellent, Ambassador Carter. The Confederation appreciates your species' wisdom in recognizing the inevitable. Shall we proceed directly to implementation schedules? Carter gathered his papers with deliberate care, his movements precise and controlled. When he looked up, something had changed in his gray eyes. Where before they had shown diplomatic neutrality, now they held a different quality entirely. I'm afraid there has been a misunderstanding, Delegate Vexithera, Carter said quietly. We have indeed consulted with Earth's leadership, and we have reached a unanimous decision. Our answer to your proposal is no. The simple word hung in the air like a physical presence. Vexithera's skin immediately shifted from confident blue to confused green, its multiple eyes focusing intently on Carter as if it had misheard the translation. I beg your pardon, the alien said slowly. Did you say no? That is correct, Carter confirmed. Humanity respectfully declines your offer of protectorate status and all associated terms. Vexithera's skin cycled rapidly through several colors, before settling on angry red. Its long limbs gestured with agitation as it leaned forward across the conference table. Do you comprehend what you are saying? You dare refuse the generous offer of the Zalathi Confederation? Carter's expression remained perfectly calm. We understand your offer completely, Delegate Vexithera. We have considered all implications and ramifications. Our decision stands. The alien's escort commander, Kethval, shifted nervously in its position. The scarred warrior's combat experience was sending warning signals that its diplomatic superior was choosing to ignore. Humans who remained this composed while rejecting ultimatums either possessed hidden capabilities or had completely lost touch with reality. "You realize what this means?" Vexithara demanded, its skin now showing aggressive crimson patterns. "Your primitive world cannot stand against Confederation might. We have crushed civilizations far more advanced than your pathetic species." Carter nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, you've made your military capabilities quite clear over the past 3 days. You've shown us examples of worlds you've conquered and species you've enslaved. Very impressive displays." The complete lack of fear in Carter's voice was beginning to genuinely unsettle Vexithara. Most species either begged for mercy at this point or made desperate threats they had no ability to carry out. This human seemed to be acknowledging confederation, superiority, while simultaneously rejecting it. "Then why do you persist in this suicidal defiance?" the alien demanded. Carter smiled slightly, and for the first time since the negotiations began, the expression held no diplomatic warmth whatsoever. "Because, Delegate Vexithara, you've made one critical error in your assessment of humanity." "And what error is that?" Vexithara snapped. "You assumed we were helpless." Captain Morgan stepped forward and handed Carter a data tablet. The ambassador glanced at it briefly before looking back at the increasingly agitated alien. "I've just received confirmation that our initial diplomatic response has been delivered to the Confederation's core systems. Perhaps you should contact your superiors to verify the situation." Vexithara's skin showed confused green patches. "What are you talking about? What diplomatic response?" Before Carter could answer, Kethaval suddenly stiffened and pressed one manipulator against its communication device. The warrior's expression shifted from confusion to alarm as rapid-fire reports flooded through its earpiece. Its scarred features twisted with disbelief as it listened to impossible information. The escort commander whispered urgently in Vexithara's ear, its words coming in broken fragments of their native language. "Dr. Rodriguez's translation equipment. Picked up pieces. Fleets appearing over homeworld. Unknown vessels. Defense grid compromised. Request immediate extraction." Vexithara's skin went completely white, all color draining from its translucent surface. "Impossible," it breathed. "Your species lacks faster-than-light capability. Our intelligence confirmed this." Carter's smile widened, becoming genuinely predatory for the first time. "Delegate Vexithara, you've spent 3 days lecturing us about how primitive we are. You've told us repeatedly that we're nothing more than clever animals, suitable for training and exploitation. Perhaps it's time we corrected some misconceptions, Lieutenant A." Collins stood and walked to the conference room's massive viewport. "Delegate, if you would direct your attention outside, you might find the view educational." Vexithara and its escort turned toward the viewport, and their reactions were immediate and dramatic. The alien delegate's skin cycled through every color in rapid succession before settling on pure white. Kethaval dropped into a combat crouch, its hand moving instinctively toward weapons that would be useless against what they were seeing. Through the transparent aluminum, space around New Geneva Station was no longer empty. Ships were materializing from apparent nothingness, their running lights creating new constellations against the star field. Sleek, predatory vessels that bore no resemblance to the clumsy chemical rockets humanity had been publicly displaying. These were warships designed for deep space combat, their lines speaking of speed, power, and technological sophistication that made Confederation vessels look primitive by comparison. The flagship appeared directly in front of the alien vessel, its massive bulk casting shadows across the station's hull. Along its sides, weapon ports opened with mechanical precision, revealing armaments that hummed with barely contained energy. Behind it came destroyers, cruisers, and support vessels, a complete battle fleet that had somehow appeared from nowhere. "Allow me to introduce the Earth Defense Fleet," Carter said conversationally. "They've been waiting quite patiently for these negotiations to conclude." Admiral Hayes's voice crackled through the station's communication system, broadcasting on all frequencies, including those monitored by the Confederation ship. "New Geneva Station. This is Admiral Hayes of Earth Fleet Command. Operation Checkmate is complete. All objectives have been secured." Vexathara's communication device erupted with frantic reports from its homeworld. The translation fragments painted a picture of complete strategic surprise. Confederation core systems surrounded by unknown fleets, orbital defenses neutralized. Without firing a shot, and defense commands requesting instructions for dealing with technology they didn't understand. "You see, Delegate," Carter continued, "while you were busy mocking our primitive culture and explaining how you intended to enslave our species, you failed to notice something important about humanity. We've been fighting wars for thousands of years. We've perfected the art of appearing weaker than we actually are. And we've learned that the best way to win a conflict is to ensure your enemy never realizes they're in one until it's far too late." Dr. Rodriguez closed her analysis equipment with satisfaction. "For 3 days, I've been studying your species' psychology and social patterns. Your people have grown complacent through easy conquests. You expect fear or submission from primitive species. You don't expect calculated patience backed by overwhelming technological superiority." Captain Morgan approached the conference table, her bearing shifting from diplomatic observer to military professional. "The fleets currently surrounding your core worlds aren't there to destroy them, Delegate. They're there to deliver a message. The same message we're about to deliver to you." Carter stood slowly, gathering a formal document from the table that hadn't been there when the meeting began. "The terms are simple and non-negotiable. The Zalathi Confederation will immediately withdraw all forces from this solar system. You will cease all expansion activities in this." The conference hall fell into complete silence except for the low thrum of massive engines outside the viewport. Vexathara stared at the human fleet surrounding its vessel, its translucent skin cycling through colors that Dr. Rodriguez had never seen before in her 3 days of observation. The alien's communication device continued crackling with desperate reports from across Confederation space, each transmission painting a picture of strategic catastrophe. Admiral Hayes's voice returned. Over the station's communication system, his tone carrying the authority of someone who had just achieved the impossible. "Delegate Vexathara, your military commanders are currently calculating the odds of survival in a sustained engagement with our forces. I believe they've reached the same conclusion we did 3 days ago." Carter remained standing, the formal document in his hands representing humanity's counter-proposal to 3 days of threatened enslavement. "You came here expecting to negotiate with primitives, Delegate. Instead, you've discovered that Earth isn't asking for its place in galactic civilization. We're taking it." Kethval, the escort commander, finally found its voice. The scarred warrior's combat experience allowed it to recognize military superiority when faced with it. "How many ships do you have?" Captain Morgan allowed herself a cold smile. "Enough." The simple answer carried implications that made Vexathara's skin shift to deep purple, a color Dr. Rodriguez's briefings had indicated meant fear. Through the viewport, more human vessels continued materializing from what had appeared to be empty space. Each ship that appeared was different from the others, suggesting not just a single fleet, but multiple task forces converging on the station. "This is impossible," Vexithara repeated, its voice barely a whisper through the translation device. "Our sensors showed no signs of advanced manufacturing. Your species lacks the industrial capacity for such a fleet." Dr. Rodriguez looked up from her equipment one final time. "Your sensors detected what we wanted them to detect. While you were cataloging our primitive radio transmissions and chemical rockets, our real civilization was developing in deep space, installations your technology couldn't penetrate." Lieutenant Collins added quietly, "The orbital factories in the asteroid belt have been operational for decades. The ships you're seeing weren't built on Earth, Delegate. They were built where your intelligence gathering couldn't observe them." Admiral Hayes's transmission continued, now addressing Vexithara directly. "Delegate, your homeworld's defense coordinators are requesting permission to attempt negotiations. Apparently, the fleets surrounding your core systems are broadcasting the same terms Ambassador Carter just presented to you." Vexithara's communication device erupted with another stream of panicked reports. The translation fragments revealed the true scope of humanity's strategic deception. 12 primary worlds surrounded, defense fleets neutralized without engagement, technology beyond current understanding, orbital installations disabled by unknown methods. "How?" the alien delegate whispered. "How did you coordinate simultaneous operations across such distances?" Carter's expression showed no mercy for the alien's confusion. "The same way we've been coordinating this entire negotiation, Delegate. While you were dismissing us as primitive, we were demonstrating technologies your civilization hasn't even theoretical frameworks for understanding." The human fleet outside had arranged itself in perfect formation around the Confederation vessel. The positioning was clearly deliberate, showing tactical precision that spoke of years of planning and coordination. Each ship held position with mathematical accuracy, their weapons trained but not yet activated. "The choice now is very simple," Carter continued. "You can accept our terms and begin the process of dismantling your empire of slave worlds. Or you can attempt to fight a war against an opponent whose true capabilities you've only begun to glimpse." Vexithara's skin had settled into patterns of defeat and submission, colors that Dr. Rodriguez recognized from her studies of conquered species. "You would destroy entire civilizations over this?" "We would liberate entire civilizations," Carter corrected firmly. "Every species your Confederation has enslaved deserves the chance to rebuild their own society. Every world you've strip-mined can be restored. Every culture you've erased can be remembered." Captain Morgan stepped forward, her bearing now fully military rather than diplomatic. "The difference between us and you, Delegate, is that we're offering you the choice. You never gave that courtesy to the hundreds of species you've conquered." Lieutenant Collins had stopped taking notes entirely, instead watching the alien delegation with the detached interest of someone observing a historical moment. "Delegate Vexithara, you've spent 3 days explaining how superior civilizations have the right to dominate primitive ones. We're simply demonstrating that principle in action." The escort commander, Keth Val, was receiving continuous tactical updates through its communication device. The warrior's expression showed the resignation of someone who had seen enough battles to recognize an unwinnable situation. "Delegate," it said quietly, "our fleet commanders are reporting that engagement would result in total annihilation of Confederation forces." "How can that be?" Vexithara demanded. "We have thousands of ships across dozens of systems," Admiral Hayes answered from the communication system. "And we have better ships with better technology operated by people who've been preparing for this." Moment since your first transmission reached our solar system 6 months ago. Carter moved to the viewport, gesturing toward the human fleet. You see, Delegate, when the Zalathi Confederation announced its intention to visit Earth, we knew exactly what that meant. We'd monitored your empire's expansion patterns for years. We knew you didn't make social calls on primitive species. Dr. Rodriguez began packing her equipment for the final time. Your mistake was assuming that any species capable of space travel would be incapable of hiding their true technological capabilities. Humans have been perfecting the art of misdirection for millennia. The communication device in Kethval's possession crackled with another transmission, this one from what sounded like the Confederation's highest military command. The escort commander's translation came in broken pieces. Total strategic surprise. Unknown weapons platforms. Request immediate ceasefire negotiations. It appears your military leadership has grasped the situation more quickly than your diplomatic corps, Carter observed. They're requesting immediate ceasefire discussions. Vexathara's multiple eyes stared at the human fleet through the viewport. The aliens seemed to be seeing the ships clearly for the first time, noticing design elements that spoke of technology far beyond anything in Confederation databases. What assurance do we have that you won't simply conquer our worlds as we have? Conquered others? Carter returned to the conference table and placed the formal document directly in front of the alien delegate. You have our word, which is worth considerably more than your threats. We're not interested in ruling an empire, Delegate. We're interested in making sure no one else does either. The terms are clear, Captain Morgan added. Full independence. For all protectorate species. Reparations to be paid for damaged worlds. Confederation military forces to be reduced to purely defensive capabilities. An establishment of a galactic council where all species have equal representation. Lieutenant Collins looked up from his silent observation. Think of it as the civilization you could have built if you'd chosen cooperation over conquest. Admiral Hayes's voice returned one final time. Delegate Vexathara, you have 1 hour to provide your answer. After that, we'll consider your silence to be a rejection of our terms and act accordingly. Vexathara stared at the document before it. The formal language outlining the dismantling of everything the Confederation had built through violence and intimidation. And if we refuse? Carter's smile held no warmth whatsoever. Then you'll discover that humans can be considerably less merciful than we've been today. The choice is yours, Delegate. Accept our terms and begin rebuilding your civilization based on cooperation rather than conquest, or reject them and face the consequences of threatening the wrong species. The alien delegate's skin had gone completely transparent, showing the internal fluids that moved with agitated patterns beneath its surface. Around the conference table, the human delegation waited with the patience of people who had already won. I must consult with the Confederation Council, Vexathara finally whispered. Of course, Carter replied politely. You have 57 minutes remaining. As Vexathara activated its communication device to contact its government, Captain Morgan allowed herself a satisfied expression. Do you think they'll accept, sir? Carter watched the alien fleet through the viewport, noting how the human ships had positioned themselves for maximum psychological impact. They'll accept, Captain. Bullies always do when they finally encounter someone stronger than themselves. Dr. Rodriguez sealed her equipment cases and stood. From a xenopsychological perspective, the Confederation's entire social structure is based on the assumption of their own superiority. Having that assumption shattered will force them to rebuild their entire civilization. Lieutenant Collins gathered his notes from 3 days of documentation.